moving on to a fairly controversial movie, Clownhouse, from the late 80s. And the controversial part, we all know, is that the director, Victor Salva, he diddled one of the kids during the movie. Well, not just during the movie, from what I've heard, he groomed that kid for years, apparently was friends with the kid's family and things like that, so there's actually a lot going on there. But the actual movie itself, it's around Halloween time. They've got these 3 young brothers. They're all alone in this big house, and their parents have gone away. I can't remember why, but they've gone away. And they end up going to a carnival that was in town that night, and one of the kids is deathly afraid of clowns, and lo and behold, a whole bunch of mental patients escape, and then, they kill these clowns, and then pretend to be these clowns for the remainder of the movie, and just terrorize the kids at home. That's pretty much the story. There's not a whole lot to it.
I'll just say it's a very, very simple plot.
I mean, I like clown movies in general. As people may or may not be aware, the original It movie, or if you want to call it a mini-series, whatever, but that original It movie, that's one of my all-time favorite movies, so, and the remake. I'll watch almost anything that's got some sort of sinister clown in it. Whether I enjoy it or not is a different story, but in this one, there's 3 different clowns. The main one, the very tall guy, whose clown name is Chizo, he's really the only one that kind of stands out. He's the main one, and I guess it's that combination of height and the makeup that he's wearing. He's the only one that kind of comes off as interesting or frightening. The others, they just jump around, look a little silly as they try and chase some kids. So, but, it still works for me because I do enjoy slasher films, and even though there's not a whole lot of violence in this film, it still plays out like a slasher film. It just seems to work as a slasher film without the use of violence, without the use of much blood.
Well, I think Halloween, the original Halloween, that's a pretty good example of a way you can build a lot of suspense without using much in the way of special effects or blood. Now, Clownhouse is not nearly as good as Halloween, but I do think Clownhouse has a lot going for it. I think it's a legitimately creepy movie, even disregarding everything about the director and what the director did. Disregarding that, I think it's a creepy movie. There's a scene with the clowns, the escaped mental patients, are chasing one of the kids through the wards, and it's entirely possible, at least in the movie, the kid doesn't even know he's being chased because he's chasing after his older brother, and there's just a creepy vibe. Anytime the clowns were there, it's just a creepy vibe. They had some great mannerisms. Even though none of them really stood out, I thought they worked really well with each other. And there's just, anytime they're on screen, there's just a creepy time.
Well, I guess I should elaborate a little bit, because you brought up Halloween, how it doesn't show a whole lot of blood, and I'd say Halloween's still more violent than Clownhouse is, because a lot more people actually die in Halloween. Whereas in Clownhouse, there's maybe... it's mostly an off-screen death scene with the clowns at the start, and the rest of the film is them just chasing kids.
Yeah, I think it's impressive, because like you said, there's very little in the way of actual violence in this movie, and it's impressive that they have such a, at least to me, I was consistently creeped out by a lot of scenes in this movie. One of the scenes near the beginning, at the circus, when one of the clowns is like pointing at one of the kids. Now at the time, it's not even one of the maniacs; it's just a normal clown. But even that scene was like, somewhat, sort of made me uneasy.
Yeah. There is also one shot towards the end of the movie where they have this slow motion shot of the little clown doll kind of falling and hitting the coffee table. I don't know, for some reason that just stood out to me. I kind of like the way they shot that little brief moment, but I think it was before some sort of attack towards the end.
One thing I really liked about this was the relationship between the three brothers. One of them's just an absolute dick to the other two, and I know, to me, I actually grew up with a brother, so just to me it felt like a real relationship between the three, and I sort of really appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, I've only got an older brother, so I kind of understand the older brother type thing, how they can be a bit of a dick. Are you saying your brother is a bit of a dick?
No. I'm just saying I sort of appreciate how the relationship, to me, it felt pretty real. All that bickering back and forth. That juvenile. Oh, you're scaring me, or you can't scare me. I know you're going to jump out. It's juvenile, but that's what a lot of kids do. So I don't know. I just really appreciated the kid actors. I thought all of them did pretty okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, the acting from the kids is not great, but I'm someone who doesn't really get deterred by child acting. Like, I kind of expect child actors to not be good actors, so that doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the actual movie itself. While some other people say, geez, this is a really poorly acted movie, I always give kids a break in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know what you expect from a movie basically featuring three teenage... Well, I mean, only one of them's a teenager, the other two are pretty young,
And I guess with the whole controversy, the director being pedophile, that type of thing, it always tends to make waves as soon as he's releasing some sort of new movie, or especially like when Jeepers Creepers 3 was being made and being released. It just kept coming up and up and up, whether you're on Facebook and all the movie groups there, or if you're on other horror websites or whatever it is, everyone's talking about it and they all have their opinions about it.
Yeah, it's a discussion that after a while it can get really old, because there are plenty of people who straight out will not pay for his movies because they do not want to give money to somebody convicted of a crime that he did, which is an entirely understandable point of view.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing about it that I don't like is when people are actually shaming other people for watching the movie. I think, and I guess you could say that's like disliking a form of censorship, because they're saying we shouldn't be able to watch this movie because of something that happened off screen, and it was happening for years, to my understanding. So it's not like it's just something specific to this movie. It's more their relationship.
It's not a one-time thing.
And I guess the thing about this movie is, or directors in general, there's only a couple of directors out there, for me personally, where I would actually watch a movie based on who's directing it. So I don't ever watch this movie or any of Victor Salva's other movies purely for the fact that he's directing it. Like, it could be anyone making this movie. I don't care who makes the next Jeepers Creepers movie or anything like that. I'm more just interested in the actual movie itself.
Yeah, I might have a sort of a cliche way of looking at it. I feel like when you're watching a movie, if you can just separate the lives of the director, the lives of the actor, if you can separate that from the movie itself, I think you'll be a lot better off. I mean, an example I always go to, John Wayne. John Wayne was an actor in a lot of Western movies back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. The guy was an absolute racist. He was a nutcase. Like, if you actually read into what he believed, he was such a heinous individual, in my opinion. Just my opinion. But his movies, at least to me, I still enjoy his movies. I can look past what I see as his flaws and enjoy a John Wayne movie. It's the same case here. The crime that this guy committed was absolutely hideous, and he probably should have been locked up quite a bit longer than he was.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm not going to avoid his movies. Jeepers Creepers it wasn't an amazing movie, but I thought it was pretty decent. And Clownhouse, in my opinion, even knowing what we know about the movie, I still think it's a pretty decent movie.
Yeah. And all the different people saying don't pay to see his movies and things like that. I mean, I don't know what these people really expect out of him, though. What he's got to at least do something. Like, he's got to work like everyone else works. And it's not like I'm guessing he's not like a millionaire in a mansion and all that type of thing. It certainly doesn't look like it from the pictures I've seen.
Yeah, if it makes anybody happy, I'll just say I've never actually paid for one of his movies. Just use streaming sites. But,
Yeah.
I've never actually paid for his movies, so if you don't necessarily agree with my point of view, just know that I've not supported the guy, technically speaking.
Well, and one other thing that I just wanted to bring up was, because one of the points that people make when they're trying to tell people you shouldn't watch these movies, or they say, don't watch his movies because of the stuff that happened. That it's very easy for a lot of people to say, and they really get on their high horse and they say, I could never do that. I don't understand how other people could do that. That they need to put, like, just switch this with another movie. Like, let's just say Halloween. Let's just say John Carpenter diddled the little kid at the start of Halloween, the little kid that played Michael Myers at the start. If that was the case, I swear, a lot of these people saying, I'd never watch this movie, or I'd throw out my DVD or whatever. If it was Halloween or something that was held in a lot higher regard, a movie that they enjoyed a lot more, would they be saying the same thing? I don't think they would.
Yeah, I feel like there'd be some people. There's some people who are really, in my opinion, they're very strong on this issue, And I suspect if that was the case, if John Carpenter had done something like that, Halloween might actually become one of those movies that a lot of people might tend to avoid more. I don't know. I don't know if there'll be as big as an issue with it because of just the sheer popularity.
Yeah.
But I still suspect there'd be some people boycotting a new John Carpenter movie.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not saying it wouldn't have zero effect, but I think in the grand scheme of things, not all of those people would say the same thing if it was about a movie that they enjoyed a lot more, like Halloween.
Yeah, you brought up a very point that I actually wanted to make. Clownhouse is, at least in the USA, I'm not sure what it's like over in Australia, Clownhouse is not a cheap movie to get on DVD. Because of what Victor Salva did, when it was last put out, they sort of discontinued it very quickly. So, I mean, I've seen some people spend $50, $60, $70 on a DVD for Clownhouse. And to my knowledge, I don't think there's a current, cheap, legal way to buy it on DVD or Blu-ray right now. And a lot of people suspect there's not going to be anytime soon because of the controversy behind it, which I think is really disappointing.
Well, I actually bought one of the original DVDs back in 2003. So I actually have one of those. The thing about it is it was only released in America. I guess you could say it wasn't even officially released. They had actually, produced all the discs and everything, and then around the time they were going to put it out in stores, I guess a lot of news circulated again about the whole controversy, and that prompted the studio to say, look, it's not worth it, it's just a cheap, shitty movie or whatever, we're just going to can it. And then just all those copies that were produced, they kind of leaked out here and there, and so some stores may have sold it before they, took it down or whatever, and even to this day, you can probably still find some new copies of it. I know it is a movie that gets bootlegged a little as well. I don't think we'll ever see it on Blu-ray, but you never know. Maybe one of those very small labels somehow gets their hands on it, and maybe they can do something with it.
It's one of the things, it just sort of disappoints me, There's quite a few horror movies, from the 1980s that may not see a proper DVD or Blu-ray release, and in my opinion, so many decent movies that are being neglected that you can only see on, VHS. Luckily, because of sites like YouTube and other sites, you can find a lot of the stuff online if you know where to look. But at the same time, the fact that it's not really available for purchase just sort of rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Although, I will point out, and I'm sure if you've seen this movie, you'd probably agree, there are quite a few scenes in the movie that, if you know what the director did, it sort of makes sense. In the beginning, this one of the young kids who is, unjust, and, you might think, hey, that's a questionable choice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's certainly some things that, feel a bit on the more gross side, but I feel like you should still be able to maybe separate the two, though I know in this case it's really difficult for some people to do.
Yeah, well, it never really pops up in my mind, but, well, at least not until now.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I actually, last time I watched this movie, which this would have been about maybe a month ago or so, maybe a little over a month, I didn't notice it at the time, and then I went online and read a few things, and a few people pointed out, I'm like, oh, hey, that's right, there was sort of a naked kid at the beginning, and I didn't think about it at the time, but, because in the story, it felt, like that could actually happen, but it definitely wasn't necessary to, moving the story forward. So it's just one of the things where I wonder exactly why the director threw that in.
I can't remember the reason why he pissed himself, but
I cannot remember either, but it just sort of felt awkward to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's completely unnecessary. It's not like one of those scenes where, like, let's just say you're watching the movie and you have no idea about the director or anything. You're kind of watching that scene, you're like, ugh, but you're not really saying, like, why was that even in the movie? I mean, you kind of understand it because they're trying to establish that he has some sort of fear or whatever, and that's why he's wetting the bed, and so there is kind of a point to it. Did they need to go so far as to show him, like, dropping his drawers or anything? I don't know, but
it's actually worth noting at this point that if you happen to disagree with either of us, please let us know, because this is something that I think is not only is it an interesting discussion, I think it's a somewhat important discussion, especially given all the news coming out of all these directors doing all these potentially iffy things with people they're working with. So this is the type of thing that's not going to disappear.
With how poorly Jeepers Creepers 3 was not just as a movie, but it seemed to not be very successful. It was meant to be shown in a lot of theaters. It ended up being like a one night only in some place, and that was it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was one of those people who was very angry about that. I think it should have been given a much wider release. No, actually, I've not actually seen the third Jeepers Creepers yet, but I have heard pretty mixed things about it.
Well, I can just tell you, it's pretty disappointing.
I mean, after a while, like, 15-year wait, like, I mean, I can't imagine it being amazing.
No, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of problems with it, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, so getting back to Clownhouse, I guess, anything else that came to mind when watching this movie?
No, I think I've kind of cut. We've probably spent more time on this movie than any of the others. So
yeah, and about like 60% of the time we're talking about Victor Salva. So. Which at the same time, I like I said, I think it's an important discussion. But like I said before, I think Clownhouse is a legitimately enjoyable movie. There's not much in the way of plot, but I think there's some really creepy scenes here. When they're playing around with the hanging dummy, for instance, just some creepy scenes, and I thought it was definitely a movie that I think would be a pretty good movie to watch, like late at night in the dark,
Yeah.
Just a very atmospheric, decent movie.
Yeah. For me personally, it's a movie that I've not entirely grown up watching, but I did watch it many times throughout my teenage years, and I'm in my mid-30s now, so it's something I've definitely got some appreciation for its time period, so I give it an 8 out of 10. I'm really fond of clowns and horror movies, and I like I said earlier, it's like a slasher film with very few deaths and very little violence, and somehow it still works, and I have to commend it for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a mixture between the, in my opinion, decent performances from the kids, and the really creepy vibe through a lot of the movie. The movie takes place basically all in one night when these maniacs are following these kids, home, and they just crew with them for, most of the night. In fact, the kids don't even know they're being screwed with until like an hour and 5 minutes into the movie. It's like pretty late. But because of that, it just has a lot of creepy things to it. And much like you, I'll probably give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's an enjoyable movie. You don't really need to go into the movie expecting to take in a whole lot. Since it's not much to the plot, you can just sort of jump into this one and, give it like 5 minutes and you know what you're going to get. So even though it wasn't the highest budget, they didn't really need one, and I think everything worked out pretty well.